Hello, welcome back, everybody. Um, I am Sheena with Krav Maga Salem, and I'm joined today by somebody very, very wonderful, somebody who I have admired and followed for a very long time, the wonderful Julie Golob, Awesome Mother, veteran hunter, world and national shooting champion. I mean, her list of accolades is as long as my arm, and I am excited to have her with us today. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be on.
How are you today? Good?
I'm good. It's been beautiful spring weather in Kansas City area. The sun has been shining a lot lately, and we're good.
Wonderful. Well, for those people who, for some odd reason, don't know who you are, can we talk a little bit about your background and how you got started in the competitive shooting world?
Absolutely, absolutely. Do you want me to just start off at the beginning, or?
Well, just kind of hit the highlights, how you got started.
Sure. Well, I grew up in upstate New York. I'm a daddy's girl, so I would be on the range with him, hunting, fishing, shooting, all of that good stuff. Just, a little bit of a range rat, hanging out with him, having a lot of fun. And eventually, I knew I wanted to get involved in the shooting sports. My dad was a competitive shooter in the practical shooting sports. And so I would hang out with him. And by the time I was 14, we decided that I was ready to jump in. And so, kind of my first shooting experience, aside from hunting, was competition. And we went everywhere that we could drive to. we were a father daughter range officer team that also shot matches together. And eventually, when I was a junior in high school, I went to my first national championships where I caught the eye of the Army Marksmanship Unit. And so I went home and said, "Mom, Dad, I'm gonna join the Army and be a shooter." And that's kind of how it all kicked off. And I think it'll be. I started shooting in '91, so I'm very rapidly approaching the 30-year mark. So it's been a wild ride.
It's such a great background story, and it's just great to hear how people got started, especially people who are as big name as you. I mean, I know you served 8 years in the Army, and you won accolade and recognition and all sorts of awards in your time. Can you tell us, is there one that you're most proud of?
It all comes back to, I think for me, winning my first national title was a really big deal. That was back in 1999. I won back-to-back nationals that year. So I won the Open and Limited National Championships in the United States Practical Shooting Association. And it was something that I worked so hard for. It was like my dream as a little girl to be able to win a national title. And I joined the Army to be able to do it. And then this was the chance, right? So I think that one was a major one. And then, all of them are special. But I've never hung on to individual national titles like that because I'm always the kind of person who thinks about what's next.
Which is a great mindset to have. And, you are definitely somebody who's constantly moving forward in this industry and building, just kind of tip of the spear, adding to the things that you do. I mean, one of the things that I love telling people about, as soon as people tell me, I mention your name and they don't know who you are, I hand them your book. I'm like, this gal right here, she's amazing. Um, can you tell us a little bit more about the books that you've written? I know I have an autographed copy, but for those at home who might not know, can you tell them more about your two different books?
Yeah, no, it's funny. I was actually approached by a literary agent that said, you've got a lot of good information out there. There's not really a how to get involved in shooting sports kind of book. And I thought, oh, well, that'd be neat, whatever. But it wasn't until I was pregnant with my first daughter and I had a lot of time on my hands that I actually sat down and put it together and wrote it. But Shoot, Your Guide to Shooting and Competition is essentially just a primer on how to get involved in the shooting sports. And it goes through so many of them, whether it's precision oriented or speed oriented or a little bit of both. And of course, things have evolved a lot since I wrote that. That was back in 2010, I think. But it's still relevant, and it's a great way to get information on what you need to know to get started. Because let's face it, we go on Instagram and we see, a Jerry Mitchell or a Rob Latham or a JJ Orkaza do something crazy, and we're like, oh wow, how do I even get started there? So it kind of takes you through the baby steps. And then I've also written a children's book about gun safety that I'm also tied in well because I'm a mom. It's just, I wanted something out there that wasn't related to animals. I didn't want something out there that wasn't related to specific hunting or fathers and sons. I wanted a book out there that represented a whole bunch of different family scenarios and got people thinking about talking about firearms and removing the mystique. So that's where that is. And I'm working on a cookbook. So my books have been like the journey of my life.
That's wonderful. So weird little tidbit about me. I think it was our second SHOT Show. I hauled your book shoot around in my little backpack because I knew that was my goal at SHOT Show. I was going to get Julie to sign my book. Like my husband will tell you, I packed, and if you've never been to SHOT Show, folks, like I don't care how much hiking and walking you do, it's not enough, right? So any extra weight in your pack is killer. But I hauled that book around the full time until I finally found you and got you to sign that book. Oh my goodness, my poor husband, he had to deal with me. So yes. Now, you mentioned a little bit about you've got a cookbook coming up, which is amazing, and you are such a gourmand. I mean, you're a mom, so of course you cook, right? But you really are a gourmand. Some of the things you put out and the different recipes you put out are fantastic. I also know that you're pretty focused on fitness and keeping yourself healthy and that kind of stuff. Can you maybe share your favorite go-to snack?
Sure. I'm pretty simple when it comes to snacking. My go-to is like dried nuts or dried fruit and that sort of thing. When I'm snacking at a match, I basically snack the whole day. So I have a ton of nuts, a ton of fruits. Sometimes I'll bring some jerky. I'll have a little bit of greens with me for lunchtime, but I generally don't eat range meals because they're usually burgers and fries and they feel really heavy. I mean, it took me a while to figure out, if I have a really big cheeseburger at lunchtime, I'm not going to feel that up for moving on the first stage after that. So I try to eat healthy all day, but nuts and fruit are my go-to.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, that's a good choice. One thing that you mentioned a little bit earlier is being from New York. Now,
Yes.
most people don't really think of New York and hunting, right? But
or anything. Yeah.
correct. I have a good friend who lives in New York, and he was telling me about how he bought some property and he has farmland, and I was like, "You're in New York. That doesn't exist in New York, does it?"
Yeah.
But it does. And on top of that, you've kind of been everywhere throughout the United States. And as somebody who hunts and fishes and does all that fun stuff, is there a particular state that you really felt connected with?
It's funny. There are things that I love about all the places that I've lived. There will always be a part of me that loves New York. Once you're a New Yorker, you're always a New Yorker, especially living upstate. There's something about New York Falls and just being there in the autumn. It's pretty amazing. And I have so many great memories, but the hunting was hard. And the shooting was kind of like Fight Club. No one talked about it. You just kind of did it on the side. But I loved living in the South because the people are so friendly and the food was so good. But if there's one place that really drew to me, we lived in Montana for 5 years, and it was kind of one of those remote outpost stations that everybody's like, "No, you're going where?" Our nearest Walmart was 2.5 hours away. It was pretty far, but as far as a place to hunt and shoot, it was amazing. So many wonderful opportunities there, and I've always enjoyed the colder weather. So part of us, my husband and I, are still drawn to the West. So when we retire, it'll one day either be Montana or Wyoming or someplace like that because we just fell in love with it.
So easy to do. I mean, we've talked about this from. I love the area that I'm at. I'm in a unique place where if you drive an hour, you can be in the mountains, or an hour you're in the high desert, an hour you're at the beach, which is wonderful. The biggest downside is that literally the pollen is so thick it's like fog.
Yeah.
So being from Montana, I know just how beautiful it is. There's some pretty great unique things about that. Here's another kind of offbeat question for you. over 50 world and national titles in 7 different shooting disciplines. Which one would you either had to work hardest for or was surprisingly challenging for you?
So I think it's all about mindset and like so many things in life, right? So in the beginning, I competed in what we call the open division, which is basically anything goes. You have a, you know, a high capacity race gun that looks like a space gun with a red dot, and it's got handles and things all over it, and it's specifically built for speed. And that was where I won my first national title. But after that, I transitioned completely to striker fired polymer frame guns, and it was a very eye-opening experience because all of the things that I had learned and how picky and like, oh, I must have a 1.5 pound trigger that feels just like this, or all of the things had to be perfect. I learned that you could still become a very proficient shooter with whatever equipment you have. So I enjoy the simpler divisions in a lot of ways because I think it teaches you a lot about shooting, and you're not so completely focused on just one thing, which is speed. There's a lot of subtleties to it. I think if I had to pick a most challenging title, it would be chasing an IPSC, an International Practical Shooting Federation World Championship, which happens once every 3 years in our sport. So it's kind of like our Olympics, if you will. And I've shot it in many divisions, but it wasn't until the last one that we had in France that I shot the classic division with a standard 1911 pistol. I was able to finally, after so many years, after going to so many world shoots since 1999, I was able to bring home ladies world title. So that was a really big one for me. And it's one that's like, oh, finally.
That's fantastic. You know, one thing you mentioned on your website, which I love, is you talk about part of your success comes from a desire to have a balance in your life. Right now, amongst all this chaos and everything else going on, how is it you are finding balance?
I won't lie. In the beginning, it was really weird because, you know, I would have this schedule. I'd drop my kids off at school. I would have, you know, 4 to 5 hours to focus on work. I would be uninterrupted. I could do whatever I needed to do. I didn't have to worry about noise or kiddos running everywhere or making sure they had their schoolwork done. I think the biggest thing with learning to have balance in life is understanding, one, what's important, and two, where you can find success and have realistic goals. Like for me right now, there are no matches going on. We don't have any competitions that are happening, and we really don't know when they're going to happen again. So instead of worrying about that or obsessing about that or what have you, I'm just working on the basics and thinking about the ways that I can improve my life, improve my family situation, as well as still stay proficient enough so that when I do get the green light to go ahead and like, oh, I can go to a match, it's there. So I think that it comes with maturity. I mentioned earlier, just being completely obsessed with all of my equipment and life in general. When I was a soldier in the Army, everything has to be perfect. To understanding, you have to give yourself grace, and you have to figure out what's important, and you have to set realistic goals. Realistic goals are absolutely the most important thing, because the second you set something that is way too high in the sky in a scenario like this, COVID, you can't do what you wanted to do. So you have to be flexible and forgive yourself at times, but also don't sit in front of the TV and watch Netflix for 24 hours straight. So you got to find a balance.
Perfect. That's such a great answer. You know, one thing I think that you find an excellent balance on is being an advocate for the Second Amendment and firearms and those rights, but not being overly political about it. And, you know, I'm not talking about anybody specific, but there are some people who sometimes can be a little brass into the political side, which I personally feel steers people and newcomers to the sports and to firearms in general away, and it isn't very inclusive for everybody. And I think you do a great job in balancing between being an advocate for the Second Amendment, but not pushing it down people's faces. And you know, I think that's always been really inspiring. You have an excellent balance there. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Oh, thank you. So for me, there are moments in people's lives where they experience an opportunity for change, right? They're catalyst moments. And sometimes that they are forced upon us in scary situations or uncomfortable situations that make it a snap second decision, right? Or there are catalyst moments where you have your first child and all of a sudden you're a parent and you are never the same again, right? But there are other catalyst experiences that can slowly change you. And I feel that, when trying to convince people about the importance of being able to own a firearm for the various different reasons we do so, because for many people it's not the same. I feel like having the ability to have an open conversation is critical. So I am not the type of person who jumps up and down and says, shall not be infringed, right? Because I know that can just shut a door to a lot of people and they're not interested. But when they know that, oh, wow, she likes fitness or she likes to cook or she likes to do this or she did this with her kids, and all of a sudden, the people that the media and politicians want us to feel are the bad people or the enemy or the corrupt or the confused. We're all of a sudden normal people. And it starts allowing you to ask the questions. And so I always strive, and sometimes I fail, sometimes I get my shackles up, like, what do you mean, like, but other times I try to always put myself in their shoes and realize that the moments in my life where I've changed my thoughts and opinion have come from a specific set of events that have happened, whether it's an instantaneous event or something slow and gradual. It's how you go about it that really matters in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I think you do a great job just by being human. I mean, like you said, whether it's a something you've cooked or something else that you've done, you find that common ground, and you are so down to earth and so kind in so many ways. I think that it is, in the best way. It makes people comfortable, and there's this recognition of this is a person, right? We have these commonalities, and it's okay if we don't think alike. Sometimes we see that just kind of the opposite, right? That people are pushing this political viewpoint so hard that there can't be any commonality. And so I think
Right.
You do a very good job of letting people recognize that, hey, I'm a person, right? I like food. I do a million different things. It's not just this one thing that I do. And we can find common ground and have conversations and come together. And I think that's really important. And you do such an excellent job of it.
Oh, thanks. I think it goes back to that balance thing that you mentioned. Like, you have to find balance in life. I mean, obviously, if the only thing you care about is politics and, political concepts, whether it's the Second Amendment or something else, you become infatuated with it, right? Whether you're online all the time, finding out who said what and who did this. But when you actually live your life like a lot of other normal people live their lives, not that I'm saying that people who aren't infatuated with politics or anything else aren't normal, but their focus is something very, very fine. And when you open those doors and realize, like, oh, okay, I may be able to connect with people more, I think it's just much more effective. And balance, it's all about balance.
Absolutely. That's going to be our theme today, apparently. So let me ask you another kind of offbeat question. You are sponsored by like everybody under the sun, which is fantastic. I mean, everybody wants to be a part of your journey, and I think that's great. Is there a particular sponsor that you're really passionate about working with?
All of the companies that I work with, I've been able to build long-term relationships with over the years, which means so much because I think that's really important when you're an athlete or a representative or an influencer or whatever you want to call it these days. The longest relationship I've had has definitely been with Smith & Wesson, and they're my primary sponsor. And I often tell people, I bleed blue, because I've been with them so long. But they were also my very first sponsor as a kid. I was a member of Team Smith & Wesson when I was, 16, 17 years old before I joined the Army. So we had history, and they've always been very supportive of junior competitors and women. And it's something I'm very, very proud of. I've been with them for this longest stint since 2006. So it's been a good journey.
And they are such a great company all the way around. I know every time I get to stop by booths and chat with some of the employees and that kind of stuff, they're always so excited and so passionate about what they're building together. And they're a fantastic company. So it's easy to bleed blue that way.
I'm not
Well,
a Vulcan or whatever the Spock or whatever he does. But yes.
so tell us, do you have anything upcoming? I mean, obviously we know there, events and that kind of stuff are on a hold. I know you said earlier you're working on a cookbook, but any seminars or any television shows or all the crazy stuff that you do upcoming that people can find you?
Everything's been canceled. I was supposed to be competing this weekend for a match in Louisiana, followed up by a national championship, followed up by some filming. April, May, June is a very, very intense time. But everything has been either postponed or canceled. So I've been told that you can watch some reruns if you watch some outdoor television. They'll be airing again. But for now, I feel that until we really kind of get our handle around things, it's hard. So I do have matches scheduled in the back end of the year, starting around September, but we'll see how that goes. And I just plan to share good information about our lifestyle. Between sharing what I do every day, and I've been playing around a lot with my equipment and kind of experimenting and opening my mind up to different ideas and playing with different carry gun setups, and just kind of just using the time wisely, because actually in a lot of ways it's a blessing because I never have time to do any of this stuff. So my basement's getting sort of cleaned up. I'm not going to show anybody that. That's a nightmare. But as far as in the future, I'm not really sure, but I'm very active on social media, and I keep a schedule as much as possible on my website. So that's where people can figure it out. But I think we're all in the same boat. We just don't know. We don't know when we're going back to work. We don't know when we're going to be able to go to the grocery store without a mask on. We just don't know.
That's so true. Speaking of your website, is that the best place for those people who want to reach out and get your book to go to find that?
Absolutely. All the links are for everything about me. That's my little hub. So it's juliegolob.com.
Wonderful. And I'll link that down below. Julie, I just want to thank you so much for giving us a few minutes of your time to chat a little bit more about just, firearms and life and, just in general. I really appreciate you coming on, and we wish you the very best. We hope that the family stays safe and healthy. And we're looking forward to seeing you out and about doing more matches. And obviously, if you're ever out in the Pacific Northwest, you just give us a call and we've got a place for you.
I will. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure. It's nice to be able to connect with people that I haven't been able to see.
Right. All right, everybody else, we'll be coming at you another day with another interview. So stand by and we'll see you guys all soon.